Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the podcast of Euromaidan Press. Today we're talking to Martin Sklenar, former Minister of Defense of Slovakia and Director for Defense and Security at the Globsec Forum, where I am reporting for the last 2 days. And it's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to have you at the conference.
Throughout this forum, a ceasefire has been discussed repeatedly as the best case scenario for Ukraine. Is that your assessment as well?
Well, ceasefire is only the first step, of course, right? What we need to do, what we want to get to is basically a justified and sustainable peace in Ukraine. That's the only thing that Ukraine deserves. That is the only thing that will actually stop the war that is going on. A ceasefire seems to be a tool for mostly for Russia to basically play with the political level of engagements with some countries who get involved in trying to get to ceasefire, just delaying basically any chance of actually solving this kind of this situation, and allowing more time for them to produce more weapons, use them, get more people, get more soldiers deployed into Ukraine, and basically continue the atrocities, continue the war, and continue killing basically also innocent civilians, as we see in the past. In the past few weeks, we have seen actually the most intense attacks of Russia on Ukraine, which also tells us that this is in no way is it Russia's objective to stop this and actually talk realistically about ceasefire or even about peace.
Right. Well, in 2015, we already had a ceasefire negotiated to stop the war, but as we see, it did not stop the war. It actually allowed Russia to rearm and attack Ukraine with a new vengeance. What will prevent the ceasefire from becoming a new Minsk 3?
Well, the most difficult piece about this is obviously making sure that it is not worth that we get to a situation where we can say that it was not worth for Russia to attack Ukraine, right? If we can do that, then we have a possibility of Russia not starting this again, because it is not worth. I mean, they do the calculations. The war, it might seem emotional and tragic, but when you are on the side of preparation or defending against an attack, it's mostly a numbers game, and it's also a calculation, right? So you have to see what are the damages that you are expecting, what are the damages to your political reputation, international reputation, right? To the stability back home, to the economic situation. What are the damages to the actual land that you want to capture? And then you do the calculations and you see it's worth or it's not worth, right? In Russia's case, they don't care about the lives of people. Obviously, they can spend as much as they want. So the calculation for them is much easier. But at the end of the day, if they get anything out of the aggression, that means that it was worth. Right, they captured new territory. They are able to, control whatever they feel they need to control. So this is an outcome that would actually lead only to a protracted situation, and then in a couple of years, maybe even sooner, Russia would be strong enough to again wage a war, just to get just a little bit either in Ukraine or even somewhere else. Might be an attack on one of the members of NATO or EU. So the main objective is to basically make sure that this isn't worth for Russia to try again. It's a difficult task. It is a difficult task. Because right now the political situation, the international political situation, doesn't seem to be on the side of making sure that we can get to a solution like this. But we run the risk if we actually allow Russia to seize some territory in Ukraine. We run the risk of Russia doing this again, and maybe even being in a situation where we cannot control that as good as we would like to.
But that is exactly what Russia will get out of a ceasefire: control over territory in Ukraine.
Well, it depends. I mean, the negotiations should be going on. I mean, Ukraine is fully ready to start talking. It seems that Russia doesn't want to start. It's because it's exactly this. I mean, they would need to give away anything that they have right now, and that's not what they would want to do. So, the primary task right now is basically to support Ukraine, continue to support Ukraine despite the negotiations, and make sure that they can be even stronger and may have a stronger position as the dialogue goes on, either directly with Russia or through mediators, but they need to be strong, and that means we need to continue to support.
You're basically voicing a strong position of the Ukrainian government about not allowing Russia to keep control over Ukrainian land, but as we've heard during the forum, that is not what the ceasefire scenario envisions. It envisions Russia maintaining control over occupied Ukrainian lands, and we somehow imagine that this frozen conflict does not exist, and then wait and see what happens next. That is what is being discussed as the best case scenario.
And we can always talk about a realistic scenario, what is possible. But also, if we talk about the ceasefire, everybody wants to stop the war, of course. First and foremost, Ukraine, right? I mean, it's their people dying, it's their infrastructure being destroyed, their homes, their factories, everything. They are the first one who want to stop this and just make sure that people can start reconstructing and then basically go about their own lives as they were, but probably it's not going to be the same lives anymore. The thing is that even if we get to ceasefire, right? So we have an area, if it's not a line, or we basically have some piece of geography that we would need to monitor somehow, and this is an area stretching 1,000 kilometers, right? If you want to stop a ceasefire, technically, when the front right now is basically 50 kilometers deep, so you get to incredible dimensions where it's critically important to make sure that the ceasefire is held, but it's so difficult and challenging to control every piece of that it almost looks like striving for a ceasefire right now would be just a tactic to delay basically a resolution of the war.
Well, that is exactly what happened with Minsk too. Basically, we've seen how Russia uses so-called peace negotiations and ceasefires, which are not actually ceasefires, just to advance its war goals. And these include not only domination over Ukraine, but basically reversal of all Eastern Europe NATO states. But let's talk about the rhetoric a little bit, because 1 year ago, Zelensky's peace plan was still the #1 idea to secure peace in Ukraine. And right now we've seen Ukrainian Foreign Minister Sybiha talking about Trump's plan as a viable plan to achieve peace, a ceasefire as what Ukraine needs. Why has this rhetoric shifted? What do you think?
Well, the situation has shifted, right? Trump's arrival in the White House has changed the situation, obviously. And if you remember, last year, people were not optimistic that the negotiations could be actually started. Now everybody's talking about the opportunity that we have to have negotiations, which, I mean, me personally, I'm a little disappointed, because it seems that we have, given to Russia another opportunity to just play around with the West and delay the resolution of the conflict. But this is, I mean, the changes mean that also the rhetoric has to change, and I'm sure Ukrainian representatives, they're in a difficult position. They have to take every opportunity that they have to explore and make sure that they are working on anything that could lead to stopping the war and basically liberating Ukraine, coming back to the situation as it was before. And now that involves President Trump in the White House. So you have to be very conscious of that. You have to make sure that you work also with the U.S. administration. The U.S. still plays a very important role in the world, and that's why you also need to adjust to the diplomacy and with the diplomacy comes the rhetoric that you need to basically keep the U.S. engaged. So it's not just the business deals, but it's also having a kind of discussion and dialogue that reflects the current situation. Because we have seen what would happen in the White House when President Zelensky was visiting. We saw what might happen actually with if the rhetoric is not right, and it basically what you say is should be opening possibilities to work closer and find solutions. And if you are able to do that, that gives you some possibilities. If you don't do that, then you are not even getting to the point of where you are discussing some of the outcomes. And foreign ministers are usually very good at this, and especially if you are a foreign minister of a country that has been in war for almost 4 years. I mean, more than 3 years. This is something that you need to take into account.
11 years.
Well, this is the full-scale war. Yes, you're right. You are right. Yeah, you are right. We could. It depends where you start the countdown with Russia. Somebody might say that Russia has started this in 2008 against Georgia, and it just continues the pattern and just tries to get to other places and export the insecurity and instability in its neighborhood.
What do we even consider a Ukrainian victory now?
Well, for the Ukrainians, I'm sure that is clear. A Ukrainian victory is a situation where they can actually rely that Russia will not do this again. That's what they want, right? This will require a strong commitment not only from the Ukrainians and from the Europeans, but also the United States, Canada, Turkey, and others, just to make sure that there is a strong enough relationship, certainly, between Ukraine and these countries to make sure that the deterrence, as we call it in the security and defense business, is strong enough to make sure that Russia has no intention. The calculation that they going to do after a settlement of the war, if that the calculation will basically tell them it's not worth to do this again.
You served in government during Slovakia's transition from strong Ukraine support to Fico's return with his peace messaging, and populists across Central Europe are gaining ground by promising to end the war quickly. Why is this message resonating with voters who lived through Soviet occupation? That's
an interesting question, and in Slovakia the situation is the population is very polarized. We have been the object of strong propaganda coming mostly from Russia, polarizing the society to a level where people don't think about the experience that they've had, but basically get influenced by disinformation and misinformation and campaigns that are very targeted against their themselves, right, the people, and questioning basically everything, which gives you a very complicated situation in which everything and nothing seems to be the true, which then is easy, to misuse and manipulate. We have seen this trend for a long time. Previous governments actually tried to do something about it, and even as the full-scale invasion in February 2022 started, there was a strong push towards limiting the influence that was there in the Slovak society, which unfortunately, due to political reasons, could not be continued, and we have seen so what the government did was basically shut down some of the online outlets of the disinformation that is being pushed into the society, and when that was done, we saw a decrease in the support for the Russian narrative. When there was no more the political will to continue this, we have seen an uptake again. So there's a clear, relationship between what is coming into the country and the opinions of the population. And it's not like the Slovaks at one point they think this, and at the other point they think that. It's still the polarized society, just basically changing very small amounts of support, which basically in the grand scheme of things meant that the government changed, and is very, very different from the previous ones.
Just to make it clear, am I hearing correctly that Russian propaganda is the reason for these changes in Slovakian society that led ultimately to support for Fico?
Well, that's basically a chicken and egg situation. But Prime Minister Fico is a very good politician, and he feels very well what the population is able to support, basically, right? What are the topics, and he can very well identify how to angle the discussion in a way that it's resonating with the small, basically very marginal groups, right? Because the main groups that are there, they remain basically the same. But it depends on how much of the marginal groups you are able to engage that give you the mobilization also then for the election. This is what is happening. Certainly, and then it leads to these kind of situations. It's difficult now to say which one was first, because it's been going on for a long time. But it's really in some ways incomprehensible that Slovaks would forget that in '68 the Soviet Union, right, and the Warsaw Pact invaded Slovakia because it had a different opinion about how to run things, and that's a big national trauma that the country feels still, and there is no doubt that anybody would actually second guess that this was not right. Mm-hmm. But there's now we see there is another angle being used, not mentioning the '68 invasion, but rather focusing on the liberation of Czechoslovakia in 1948 by the Red Army, which now the Russian Federation claims all the responsibility, even though it was Ukrainians and other nationalities who served in the Red Army and helped to liberate Slovakia, but that's most of the times overlooked. And it's coming back to this basically misinterpreted history that also we have seen during the socialist times, right? Right after the Slovak national uprising against the fascist regime in 1944 and 5, then before the end of the Second World War in 1948, when the Communist Party took over, they reconstructed basically or revisited some of the historical facts and connotations, making it in favor of the socialist regime, and that's also resonating with some of the older populations, and basically gives you the situation where you have multiple versions of the same situation, and you can in a world where the truth has been relativized, you can then choose which one you believe.
This is absolutely fascinating, because Russia uses a very similar playbook in Ukraine, also exploiting issues of historical memory, which have very strong resonance with many segments of the population. So
seems to be very effective. Huh?
Yeah, it is very effective indeed. What actions in Slovakia were useful to limit the spread of this disinformation?
So the most effective, as I mentioned, was the taking down some of the outlets that spread the information. But there is only so much a country can do, right? In the current times, most of the people consume their news and their opinions, of course. The opinions that they want to believe, they find them on social media, right? So the biggest struggle in making sure that we get a handle on this is having a dialogue and a conversation with the platforms, with the social media platforms, and in general with the media, basically, just to make sure that there's the professionalism that we expect, right? Because we grew up, at least I did, grew up in a world where news and news were produced by professional journalists who studied, who know how to do the news, how to make sure that the news are objective, right, and that you provide a picture for the people to make their own opinions. And this is a time when basically this has gone away, and people don't distinguish between professional journalists and just people sharing opinion on social media or wherever. So that is something that should change, and it's a long list of long-term things that you have to do, starting with media literacy and then education and some of the analytical thinking that is required also for understanding what is actually being pushed at you and that you are being a target, right? To simplify this, I mean, if propaganda is part of the war, as General Gerasimov was so kind as letting us know in 2007 that this is what Russia will be actually doing, but we didn't listen. He proposed what we now call the hybrid warfare doctrine, or the Gerasimov doctrine, where he said that basically whether it's peacetime or crisis time, Russia is going to do information operations all the time, just to push their objectives and their aims, which means that this has been going on forever. The battlefield for these operations, right? I mean, this is a general talking about how they do something that is worth for the military, and they do it all the time, and they do it in the information space. So that means that in this sense, the social media becomes a battlefield, a battleground, but the people don't perceive it that way, right? They don't understand. If they want to, if people, regular population, they want to make their judgment whether or not they want to join the military, they basically think about what are the risks and what are the rewards, right? I mean, I earn so much money, I have a stable job, but this is the risk. I mean, if the situation deteriorates, I might end up somewhere fighting for the country, for my country, for other countries. This is the kind of assessment that you have to do, and you make an informed decision, so to say. But if you want to create a profile on social media, that's not what you think about. That you are joining the battlefield, and if you log in, every time you log in, you become one of the soldiers. And I mean, it could be your choice to become one of the soldiers on either the, let's call it, the good side or the bad side, or just stay there indifferently and be basically the target in the middle of them. So that's something that we should probably work on also in terms of awareness for people to understand that if you are here, this is an information space. This is where also the battlefield reaches into. So make your own assessment how you want to deal about it.
Fully agree. Throughout the forum, I've heard many moderators say, "I'm sorry," when Ukrainians mention some lack of support. For instance, when discussing Russia's red lines that prevented weapons deliveries, or the coalition of the willing appears to be a coalition of the good willing from beyond the Ukrainian western border. What do you think is the number one reason preventing the West from really stepping in to ensure Ukraine's victory? I mean, we've heard that, yes, it has more military advantage, more money, more technological advantage, more, but somehow Russia is winning right now. So what's the number one problem?
Yeah, I think it's the false perception of peace in Europe. And it's, I mean, sometimes we say that, Ukraine is far away from like Paris or Madrid or Rome. So it's not as urgent as, for example, in the Baltic countries or Poland, who have a border with Russia, and they know exactly what might be happening. But I think it's not only that, but also the populations in these countries, they feel very secure, very normal, I have to say, right? I mean, even here in Prague, I mean, it's a beautiful city. When we go outside, there's no signs that Russia is in war with Europe, and they are telling us, right? They are assigning us these objectives that we are an enemy country. They are pushing propaganda. They are making their influence. They are sending their shadow fleet across the Baltic Sea, just seeing whether something bad happens that they might use as pretext for any escalation. So they are pushing this. They are attacking us in this way. And just now in one of the panels we got a question. So Russia is attacking NATO members in this hybrid, in this below the threshold way. But people don't feel like it, right? So and if it's below the threshold, it also means that people think it's going to be fine. and it's if it's below the threshold, then okay, maybe there's a little bit of discomfort, and we should probably there should probably be people who are watching this and making sure that we know if it becomes even worse. But right now it's fine. And we live our lives as we used to live them, which in Europe also means a lot of social benefits and money being spent on having a great time. Sorry for the simplification, but with that also comes a lack of maybe interest and support for difficult political decisions about supporting Ukraine to the level that it would be actually necessary, right? And the politicians are in a situation where if they push too hard and if they don't have the support of the people, then they will lose the election. And what we are risking actually is that we get, just like in the Slovak case, more representatives who would come into the important functions and positions, basically doing even less. And that would be a difficult situation for Ukraine without any. Currently, I mean, there's no end to the war inside, and the negotiations basically didn't even start basically. So, I would say it's this perception of peace in Europe, despite the fact that we are in deep trouble.
But who will make these difficult decisions? Just right now, in the panel that you just moderated, Oana Lungescu, Romanian-born former NATO spokeswoman, said that there has been no Russian attack on NATO members, and that war has not come to Europe. And this is despite drones regularly Russian drones falling on Romanian soil, and Romania pretends to not see. And despite active war actively going on in Europe, because Ukraine is part of Europe. So who must make these decisions then? It's not going to be the population making them.
No.
How do we then solve this if the politicians are bound by the wills of their populations, and there are these populist politicians who exploit this? It appears that we are destined to failure.
It's not like they're not doing anything, right? I mean, it's these decisions are still being taken, and a lot of governments, I mean, decide despite the lack of support for these decisions. Right? I mean, I don't think in any country there was ever like resolute support for donations of military equipment to Ukraine. I mean, that would be hard to imagine in any context. So the governments are doing this, but we're talking about to make sure that Ukraine is able to negotiate from a position of strength. It requires much more support, and the level of increase that is necessary there is difficult to explain to the populations. So the politicians don't necessarily need to make all the decisions at once, but they certainly must do a lot of explaining and awareness raising about what is at stake. And it's not only Ukraine; it's basically the way of life of ordinary citizens that is at stake. Because we hear Russia could be ready to test NATO and the EU in 2 to 5 years. Everybody differs on the assessment, but 2 years, that could be basically any time. So whenever there is an opportunity, it looks like Russia might use it, and the people should understand that from one day to another. Today we woke up and we saw news about Israel launching an attack on Iran. Just like that, it could be news about Russia starting something to challenge the unity and the cohesion and the strength of NATO and the EU in the Baltics, in Romania, or anywhere else.
That brings me to my next question. Several times during this forum, the elephant in the room has been brought up: Russian nuclear weapons. This still appears to be Russia's strongest deterrent, because Western nations submit to Russia's red lines due to this nuclear fear. But Ukraine violates these red lines daily, with Russia attempting to downplay the results. Do you see any chance of this dynamic changing, or are we stuck with this nuclear paralysis indefinitely? Because I can quite imagine that Baltic states are attacked, and then again Russia's nuclear threat is brought up as a reason for not intervening.
Well, that is the most difficult discussion to have, right? Because the weapons, they are so horrifying that even the slightest possibility of them being used is seen as the most extreme measure, and you don't want to play with that kind of situation at all, because this is not what we want. And I don't know whether I mentioned it, but we haven't chosen this kind of situation, right? It's not us. This is, Vladimir Putin deciding, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to put everybody in a situation in which they are uncomfortable, and do this as long as necessary, just to break their will, and basically, do as I feel like doing. And the nuclear weapons discussion is a very important one. Despite the expectations that if anything happened, Russia might be actually using the weapons or signaling their use or something like that, we have seen both horizontal and vertical escalation of the war from Russia's side, and then basically. Balancing it out from the Western side. This is the if you deliver F-16s to Ukraine, you will see the response from Russia, and we are not shying away from using nuclear weapons to protect our territory. The F-16s are in Ukraine, they're flying, nothing has happened, right? We have seen, Ukraine cannot target, targets in Russia, otherwise it will mean the use of nuclear weapons. This has not happened. So the rhetoric from Russia is also, I don't want to say inconsistent, and I don't want to say that they don't really mean it. This is exactly the kind of situation where you cannot really take it out of the equation and just not deal with that. But just as drones have seen, drones represent the change of how modern warfare is being fought. And will once this is over, or not even after it's over, but already now we see the discussion about what is the role of this modern technology and what is the role of the traditional military equipment in the war. I think a discussion about what is the role of nuclear weapons and what can they actually achieve in a conflict like this and in a war like this, we will need to have that kind of discussion very soon. What it means and why do we have the nuclear weapons if it looks like the situation in which they should be used, they are not even being signaled to be used.
Perhaps that's the topic for the next Globsec.
Well, that's of course I lead the security and defense research in Globsec, and the discussion on nuclear weapons is always like the cherry on top of everything that is there, because it represents so much of the strategic considerations and represents very much the geopolitical situation in which we are finding ourselves. So always happy to do that, and next year I'm sure there's going to be much more to talk about than just the nuclear weapons.
Okay, cynical voices in Ukraine say that the West benefits from this war. After all, Russia is using its Soviet-era stock artillery to kill Ukrainians, and if it didn't do this artillery could be used to attack NATO countries. So basically, the West is buying its time for rearmament, it's buying its peace with the price of the blood of Ukrainians. Do you think that such rhetoric has a rational base? Does the West benefit from Russia's ongoing war against Ukraine?
No, that's certainly not the case. The West is not benefiting from this. I mean, Ukraine has chosen to be part of the West, right? Ukraine has chosen to be part of the EU, of NATO, and I would say that now we know that we didn't do enough before the full-scale invasion to bring Ukraine closer to the West and probably into NATO. I mean, that would make sense. If we were in a similar situation right now, I think we would do our utmost to make sure that Ukraine is protected by Article 5, if it would prevent the full-scale invasion by Russia. So Ukraine has chosen this. When this is over, not if, but when this is over, Ukraine will become part of the West, and so the West is losing. So the West is losing. Every citizen in Ukraine that is killed is a loss for the West. I don't think that we should look at it any other way. It's what I will say is that the West fully recognizes that Ukraine is fighting a war for the whole of the Western community against Russia, and it's a situation that also due to political setups and geopolitical situations, and is very complicated to manage. If Ukraine was a NATO member, I mean, this would be much simpler, right? That's what is so attractive about being a NATO member or an EU member, because you have the basic arrangements with the countries that you can rely on, and Ukraine is in a very challenging situation right now, just because we are not quick enough to, or we didn't believe that Russia would actually do this, and we have put them in this unfortunate situation. But then with the support, we're trying to help. But that brings up the political considerations that we already talked about.
Thank you very much for this extremely insightful interview. I
Thank
wish you
you.
great success with the Globsec Forum.
Thank you very much. This was nice. Thank you.
Thanks.